Welcome back to LeEdFollow. Today we're servicing the MR2. So first thing, took the car out for a drive this morning, got it nice and warm, came back, reversed it up onto some ramps here to make it easy access to get to everything. So I've gone for 5 litres of fully synthetic 5W30 from Titan, and I've gone for a genuine Toyota oil filter just to make sure it fits first time, no issues. Okay, so with the car in the air, I've removed the dipstick and I'm just taking off the oil cap. Get that out the way. Here we go, nice and clean. Now, getting under the car, don't need to actually remove the under tray. There's a little flap here just below the sump nut. I don't know if you can see it there. So no need to remove the whole tray. Just take a 10mm socket and get this open. With the flap open, I can now get in here and undo the sump plug with a 19mm socket. Fluid's now draining out. So with the oil drained and the tray out the way, I've refitted the bolt and the washer, and I've just hand tightened it as tight as I was happy with it. You're supposed to do them to 15 foot-pounds torque. Unfortunately, I didn't have a torque wrench that would go to 15 foot-pounds and have a 19mm socket with it, so I've just done it by hand. But now I'm just going to reinstall the screw, put the cap back. Okay, so after saying that you don't have to get the tray off, turns out I do need to get the tray off, because even though I've changed the oil, I can't get to the oil filter with both hands. I just can't get the torque on it to undo it, because you can usually just put your hand through from the side. So I'm going to take this off now. And also a top tip, I take 2 of these trays, one to actually drain the oil in and the other one to catch the oily oil filter when it drops. With the tray out the way and the oil filter loosened with a screwdriver and a hammer because it wouldn't shift, it's now loose. So let's get this off and get it out. There she comes. Now just clean the oil filter seat, make it nice and clean, and then I think we're about ready to put the new filter on. So the new filter already comes with some oil that's already attached to it, but there's no harm in just putting a little drizzle of engine oil around the seal. What you should also do, because this oil filter sits upside down the bottom of the engine, when you first start it up, you don't want it to run dry, and you don't want the oil level to suddenly drop half a litre, so it's best to pre-fill this with oil before you reinstall it in the car. So as you're filling it, what you'll notice is the oil level drops inside the paper filter. That's as the actual filter is soaking up the oil like a sponge, so you might have to repeat this and fill it a few times to top it off to the top. So now we've got the new oil filter back in place. It should spin really easy to begin with. It should go pretty much all the way up, and then what you'll notice is that when you get to the top, there's a noticeable place where it stops. So you should only get that at the end. If you've found a place that it stops before it's met the actual the seat, then chances are you've got it threaded wrong. So take it off and be very careful to make sure you don't cross thread it. So for that final turn, I've got a rubber glove on. I'm gonna give it a bit of a clean, make sure there's no oil on it. And then all I need to do is, with the rubber glove on, it will give me a little bit more grip. Just got to give it a turn as tight as I can. And yet, that's not going anywhere. You don't need to get any kind of torque on this with a torque wrench or anything. Just as hard as you can, hand tight, plenty. So the filter's on, sump plug is refitted, under tray is refitted, but before I refill it with oil, what I want to do is tackle this leaking rocker cover. So we've got 1, 2, 3, there's a few more bolts around there, but basically remove all those bolts, get the rocker cover off, change the gasket. So first thing you're going to need is a 14mm socket so that you can remove the cross brace that goes across the top of the engine. With the bar removed, you've got nice easy access to remove the top cover, which is only held in by 4 bolts. And then you can undo the bolt here and the bolt here so that you can bring the power bar loose, but you need to remove the 4 coil packs before you can get that out the way. Remove the first coil pack. I can see oil inside the spark plug tube, so that gasket very much in need of being replaced. Okay, so all the bolts are out, as you can see, all the way along here. There's one there, one there, there was one there was a long one there. You need to put a 12mm on that one, but everything else is a 10mm, one there, and then one there, and one there. Now, all I need to do, give the whole cam cover a bit of a wiggle, maybe even gently lever it with something in the corner, and hopefully this should just pop off. Okay, and with that, off it pops. You can see everything there. Gasket came loose, so I was pulling it. All I need to do, new gasket in, put the cover back on. Okay, it looks like this was the original factory gasket. It's really quite brittle. I was worried it was going to fall into different pieces when I took it out. So be very careful as you're removing it. Make sure that nothing breaks off and that nothing falls into the gears and everything, or you're in the right shtuck then. Okay, so back to the engine. What we got to do is just give it a clean before we put the new gasket in. You can see in this top corner, all I've done is I've got a bit of tissue and I've given it a gentle rub, trying to rub the dirt away from the inside the engine so that if there are any little bits of crap, they fall out of the engine, not into the engine. But I'll just go around the entire outside, clear this all up, make sure it's a nice, clean surface. Last thing I'm going to do is a bit of tissue with a little bit of brake cleaner, and I'm just going to go over it one more time just to make sure there's no grease on there. Okay, here's a new gasket, got it off eBay, nice and cheap, about 12 quid. And here's the cam cover. I've just gone round the edge with a bit of tissue just to make sure there were no crud in there, because this sits in that groove. And you basically pop these two things back on the engine, should sit nice and tight. Okay, so new gasket's on. What I tend to do is start by locating the spark cover gaskets, because it's a lot easier to start from there and then work your way around. You might have to give it a little bit of a stretch. They're slightly smaller so that when you stretch it, it makes a nice tight fit. What you're going to see is there's no way that any oil's going to get out over the gasket, between the gasket and the cover here. However, what you do find sometimes is that a little bit of oil can get by the bottom of the gasket where it touches the head. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around the head of the engine with a little bit of gasket sealant just to make sure it's totally stuck. So let me go over here to my drawer of many things, and I have some Loctite in here. Can't remember if it's the black stuff or the orange stuff, but either should do. You just want some Loctite flange sealant. They're basically all the same anyway. I have to be quick because it's starting to spit with rain, but what you can see, I've just followed the contours of where the gasket sits with a little bit of sealant just to make sure that that new seal sticks to the engine nice and tight. Okay, as well as the big gasket, you'll have two little gaskets which sit underneath the two big bolts that go through the centre of the cover. So let me show you that. So the cover's back on, and it's here and here. These are extra long bolts. So I've just put the new gaskets that come with the kit under there, and you've got to tighten those up. If you do those first, that gets it nice and central, and then you can go around and do the outside nuts and bolts. What I would recommend, start from the inside, so maybe do this one, then that one, and then do this one, then that one, then that one, then that one, and basically work from your middle opposite sides all the way out to the outside. That's basically the usual trick to make sure that you tighten them evenly and you don't distort the seal. All bolts back in, and I went hand tight from the middle, working my way out. And then once I'd done all of them, I went back again, middle, 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 out, 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 out. You get the idea. Reconnected the vacuum hose at the top and reconnected the vacuum hose at the bottom. Now, all that's left to do is put this back, put the coil packs back in, put the cover on, put some oil in it. Coils are back in, cover's back on, battery's reconnected. I've put some oil in it. The manual and the internet says 3.7, 3.8 litres is what this engine takes when you do a filter change. What I've done is, so that I don't overfill it and have to drain some off, I've only put 3.5 in there. And what I'm going to do is, after I've taken it for a drive, I'll recheck the oil levels, and if it needs a bit more, I'll top it up then. Notice I haven't put the cross brace back on yet, because it's a lot easier to get to the oil filter without the cross brace in the way. Okay, so we're all done. Brace is back on, battery's reconnected, oil's in, sump plug's tightened up, filter's changed. All I've got to do now is take it for a drive, let it warm up, make sure that all the oil moves around, and that if there's going to be any leaks, that they're going to show themselves. In the morning, I'll be checking the oil level, topping up if needed, and checking for any further leaks around the cam cover and the sump. But fingers crossed, there shouldn't be any, because everything's nice and tight and new. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it's useful for anybody out there with an MR2 Roadster who's doing these kind of jobs. And yeah, stay subscribed for more MR2 content in the future, and see you next time on LeEdFollow. Take care. Bye bye.